Hello, hello, hello. Hey, this is Warren Redlick. Thank you so much for watching. Tesla released the slides from Investor Day, and I wanted to go through those. This is the Daily Lie. If you're not already, if you're watching, you're already a member. Thank you for joining as a member. That's free. If you want to consider supporting me on this platform, supporting the biggest things you get are you get to participate in the live chat, you get to comment on posts, and I provide a lot of early access to my videos and sometimes exclusive videos to supporters of the Daily Lie. I also provide that uh, early access to Patreon supporters, YouTube channel members, and we'll probably start providing that. I now have Twitter subscribers eligible, so I'll probably start providing that to Twitter subscribers as well. So the first thing I want to talk about here, I'm just going to go through the slides. This is the slides from Investor Day's presentation. This isn't the one that I'm super excited about. How does it do that? So what we have here is, I don't know why it's moving around the screen like that. So this slide is just talking about how the current economy is dirty and wasteful. And 80% of energy comes from fossil fuels, and only a third. There's a point here that they're getting at, which let me get to the next slide that really lays this out. It's this slide here that really lays this out, and I want to show you what this is about. With fossil fuels, because they're so inefficient, that you have 165 petawatt hours, which I think is 165,000 terawatt hours, which is 165 million megawatt hours, or 165 billion kilowatt hours. I think that's what it is. But anyway, you have to have this much energy produced in order to supply the energy needed, because so much fossil fuel energy ends up being wasted. But if you switch to all electric, the use of electric energy is significantly more efficient. Like 50%, I'm making up the number 50%. It's twice as efficient or 50% more efficient than fossil fuels, and possibly more efficient than that. So just as an example, a Tesla car is about 3 or 4 times more efficient. The electric miles per gallon the miles per gallon equivalent ends up being 3 or 4 times as high as a comparable car. So, so basically what they're saying is that it cuts the need for energy in half. And then you apply that to what's needed. This is probably one of the bigger slides here. What's needed is 240 terawatt hours instead of what they've talked about in the past. And this is a critical distinction about what Drew Baglino and Elon and Jeff Don, who's a battery professor at Dalhousie University in Canada, not Dalhousie. I think it's Dalhousie University in Canada, who's a battery researcher who is contracted with Tesla and does research for Tesla. They talked about needing 300 to 500 terawatt hours of batteries in order to complete the transition to sustainable energy. And what this slide is showing you is that they think they can do it with only 240 terawatt hours because electricity tends to be so much more efficient. There's more explaining that later. For those who follow my battery revenue model, from the battery revenue model perspective, this is significant, and you're going to see that more further on. But you can see 30 terawatts of renewable power, 10 trillion. There's a whole bunch of other stuff in here, but I don't want to dive into that so much. Let me just keep going here. So they have this slide here, the plan to eliminate fossil fuels. And is it doing that? Move this over a little bit, make this a little bigger. Okay. I think I need to make this a lot. I'm playing around with the slides here. I didn't plan this ahead as much as I should have. So what they're planning is that 35% of the reduction in this is, I believe this adds up to 100. I didn't do the math. 35 and 30 and 43 is 78. I think that's 90. Yeah, so that's 100. They're planning to eliminate all fossil fuel use through 35% of it comes from this. 35% of it comes from renewably powering the existing grid. 21% comes from switching to electric vehicles. 22% comes from switching to heat pumps, which is like heating, ventilation, and air conditioning is commonly done with a different method, and heat pumps are apparently a much more efficient method to heat and cool homes and heat and cool businesses. High temperature heat delivery. Let me get this red arrow out of the way. High temperature heat and hydrogen for certain critical industrial processes that need very high heat, and then sustainably fueled planes and boats. I just really quick on the sustainably fueling planes and boats. They didn't get into that in any depth in the presentation. I have the view that the Boring Company will actually eliminate this entirely. Not entirely, but 95% of shipping, and cruise ships will still be cruise ships, but cargo shipping and both airplane flights and cargo plane flights will all become irrelevant if the Boring Company does a tunnel under the Bering Strait. If the Boring Company builds hundreds of thousands of miles tunnel around the world, it will be a very simple, less expensive way to provide cargo shipping. It'll be a less expensive way to provide transportation than flying planes. It'll be a less expensive way of shipping goods from North America to Asia and ultimately Europe than big boats that are going across the ocean. So that's a theory there, but that's a small point. I just wanted to mention that really quick. Let me just check to see if anything's going on in the chat. Fossil fuel used for transportation utilities, not manufacturing, which is about a third of fossil fuel consumption. Is there any question now about the source of FUD and the hatred and shorting towards Tesla? Yeah, you mean ultimately, right? What they're basically saying is this is how we're going to eliminate the oil industry. I mean, there's other uses for petroleum. So there will still be uses for petroleum, but this is basically like, you can see why the Saudis might not like this plan, right? Makes you wonder why they're invested in Lucid Motors. So, let me get back to, okay. I have a couple of beefs with this story, by the way. We're going to get to that. Okay. So the first part is repowering the existing grid with renewables, and you see 24 terawatt hours of stationary storage, 10 terawatts of solar and wind, and a $0.8 trillion manufacturing investment. This is a lot of bang for the buck. You're getting most of a big chunk of the reduction in fossil fuels, 35% of it, with only a $0.8 trillion manufacturing investment. That's a pretty big jump. I'm going to go through some of these quick. Switch to electric vehicles. You get a far less bang for the buck, 21% out of 35%, and it's $7 trillion in manufacturing investment. They did say they think the manufacturing investment would be less. And really quick note here, that the 115 terawatt hours, I think Elon caveated the 115 terawatt hours. I think there was a little bit of a caveat to the 24 terawatt hours. If the world of if a sustainable, renewable energy system is more efficient than just twice as efficient as fossil fuels, then these numbers come down. The need for battery cells comes down. That's a story. Again, I'm not sure I buy the story. Okay, this is the slide I have the most problem with. So let me pull up my right arrow again. So this is the distribution of vehicles. So this is the distribution of vehicles. You got 40 million S and X class vehicles. I don't think this is saying that there'll be 40 million Tesla Model S's and X's, but rather there will be other electric vehicles in the same class of, high-end luxury sedans and SUVs. Then there will be 380 million of the 3 and Y class, which is basically compact to mid-size sedans and SUVs. I suppose Model X qualifies as a large SUV. No, this is Model Y. So compact and mid-size SUVs and sedans. 380 million of these vehicles, 20 million semis, which is worth talking about, but I'm not going to address it here. 300 million of Cybertruck and other, which looks like a van, and 700 million of Robotaxi, or this Generation 3 platform vehicle. So my biggest issue is here. I have an issue with the whole thing. Like, as I see it, the Generation 3... Okay. Are we heading towards a world of robotaxis or not? If we head to a world of robotaxis, then I just want to ride. And the vast majority of the world, the population of the world, not the wealthy world, but the vast majority of the population of the world can't afford these cars and can't afford these cars. You cannot sell these cars in India with any significant volume. You can't sell them in Africa in any significant volume. You can't sell them in Latin America in any significant volume. There's most of China. Some of China can afford these. China's such a big country. Some of China can afford it. But for 80 to 90% of the world's population, these vehicles are too expensive. these vehicles are too expensive, but they're for consumers, but they have a use. These vehicles, this Generation 3 platform vehicle, which is going to be half the cost of the Model 3 and Model Y, and I think there may be a future variant or something. There may be future variants. Like one of my beefs is, where's the single passenger electric vehicle? If you follow me a lot, you know I believe that the future is actually single passenger electric vehicles, because that would be the most efficient way of transporting a large number of people around. It'd be the lowest cost for the consumer. It would use fewer batteries. You could radically reduce this 115 terawatt hours needed if you said, you know what, our big volume vehicle is going to be a vehicle with a 10 kilowatt hour pack instead of a 40 kilowatt hour pack. You'd need 1/4 of the batteries. So it's much easier to get there. You'd be able to provide robo-taxi rides to people for 5 cents instead of 25 cents. The ARK Invest vision is that down the road, this vehicle will be providing rides in robo-taxi networks for 25 cents a mile. We're currently in Uber, just for context, an Uber is about $2.50 or $3 a mile, and owning your own car is about 70 cents a mile. So if you can get rides for 25 cents a mile, sounds great for Americans and wealthy Europeans and wealthy Chinese people, but for the vast majority of the world, even 25 cents a mile is too expensive. And I think this vehicle comes into play. You can provide rides in minibuses, minivans, whatever. I think this is probably going to be a 20-seat passenger vehicle that's like hyper efficient, and you can really lower the cost there, but it's not as convenient. And there's a group of people who are going to want to ride in their own vehicle, you know, alone, not having to share a ride with others. So and then if you believe that this vehicle is going to replace 5 internal combustion engine vehicles, right? 5 as a robo-taxi, it's going to do 5 times as much work. And this is serving the role of 3.5 billion vehicles when the Earth only has 2 billion vehicles. So there's this slide is a little bit of a fudge in my mind. I mean, I love Elon, I love Drew. This is Elon and Drew's presentation. I think this adds up to less than 2 billion vehicles when you look at it. It's like, 1.5 billion vehicles, and I think that makes sense. But that's assuming a very limited role for robo-taxi. And the way I see it, if you can offer people rides for 5 cents a mile, and you can serve 5 times as many people with that vehicle, or 25 cents a mile even, then why would you be making such a high volume of vehicles that are unnecessary? So the 20 million semis, that's probably about right. I think this Cybertruck, I don't know if 300 million is right for Cybertruck in this van. I think there's an open question. I don't think they know, by the way. I don't think that Tesla actually knows how this is going to play out. And, there's another question here. What year is this? I think this is 2040. There's no way, Tesla's going to start making going to get to 20 million vehicles a year by 2030. It's going to take a long time to get here, and nobody else is really on pace for it. So, open question at when we get there. Let's see. Plastics, Mitch. Jim Manley says the boring bearing tunnels require surface access for emergencies every 30 miles or so, and access in unfriendly countries, and so are a pipe dream. Well, it's a tunnel dream. I agree that there's questions with the boring bearing idea. And for those who don't know, I have a video on my YouTube channel, Boring Bearing, where I talk about how Tesla could do tunnels under the Bering Strait. I agree. I don't think the emergency issue is important because there's an island in the middle of the Bering Strait, and I think that it's close enough that would work. Russia's an unfriendly country. China wants this really bad. I trust China to pay Putin off and make it work. Yeah, Jim Manley says that there will be more than one Generation 3 vehicle eventually. Apparently it's Generation 4, and I'm calling it Generation 3. The next generation vehicle, we'll call it. It's very clearly a platform. I actually wonder if the 300 million vehicle under a tarp is actually also built on the same platform as the robotaxi vehicle. Interesting question. Jim says single passenger EVs are nearly as large and heavy as 2-passenger. No. Yeah, okay, so occasionally the tunnels will be shut down for days. You build an extra tunnel. You're fine. The single passenger vehicle, this vehicle that they're talking about, I'm not comparing it to some imaginary 2-passenger vehicle. I'm comparing it to this vehicle, which is still somewhat imaginary, but we have some sense of it, that this vehicle is probably going to weigh 2,500 pounds. Maybe it gets down to 2,000 pounds. And the vehicle I'm talking about is less than 500 pounds. So that's a really, really significant difference. And yes, I agree. There will be accidents in tunnels, and that will shut down tunnels for a period of time. I realize that's a potential problem, but It's not something that can't be managed. This is an engineering issue, not a physics issue. All right. So this is, I think, I'm going to be making a separate video specifically going through this. I think this is an interesting choice of distribution, and there's an open question. They didn't say what year this is, and it's obviously not 2030. There's no way this many electric vehicles are produced by 2030. I'm not clear you can produce this many electric vehicles by 2040 because no one else is ramping. So if Tesla's building 20 million vehicles a year and you've got to build 1.5 billion vehicles like this, I think that's 75 years. So somebody else has to step up and make a lot of EVs. You know, is Tesla going to make 1 million semis a year for 20 years? Even at 20 years, you wouldn't get there, right? Because you're starting in 2030. You're getting, when is Tesla going to hit volume on semi? When would they achieve 1 million a year? 2028 maybe? So yeah, Mitch says we have to assume that other EV manufacturers contribute to the global fleet, but I don't see that yet. I would hope so. This is part of what Tesla was doing. This is one of the things that I think a large percentage of the people watching missed, was this was a call from Tesla for others to join Tesla in carrying this transition out. That Tesla doesn't want to just do it alone. That it won't happen as fast if Tesla does it alone. That other companies need to step up and make electric vehicles and make heat pumps and build batteries and all that. Jim Manley, Jim, you have a lot of explanations for why the tunnels won't work. Yes, there will be engineering that you would have to need engineering planning to solve potential problems. I don't dispute that. Obviously, it's not like you're just going to build a tunnel and magically it all works. There has to be engineering involved in how do we deal with problems. So, but we don't need to dive into that too much. Let's get on with the slideshow here. So yeah, I mentioned this before that it's roughly EVs are roughly 4x as efficient as comparable vehicles, and comparing a Tesla Model 3 to a Corolla is nowhere near as good of a car as a Model 3. So it'd be interesting to see. One of the things that we're waiting to see and we didn't get an answer to yet is, what is the efficiency of this vehicle up here? What is that efficiency? I want to know the answer to that question, and we don't have an answer to that question. Is this going to be 6x the Corolla? I think it's going to be roughly 6x the Corolla. Like the Model 3 is about 4.5 miles a kilowatt hour. I'm guessing this vehicle is going to be 6 miles a kilowatt hour. I'm only guessing. Now, my vision for the single passenger EV is 20 miles a kilowatt hour, but that's, long conversation. So this one, heat pumps. For those who don't know, Tesla makes heat pumps for the Model Y and the Model 3. And I think all Tesla vehicles now use heat pumps instead of regular air conditioning and heating. And this is more efficient in a variety of ways. This saves a lot of energy. That's a fairly small investment. Again, this is only $0.3 trillion for a 22% reduction in fossil fuel use. Now, I think we need a Tesla presentation on more depth on heat pumps. And I have a feeling it's coming when they announce that they're doing heat pumps. So this appears to be an HVAC system or a heat pump system to heat and cool homes. That this is something no one talked about. Like I didn't see anybody talking about the heat pump. To me, it was a pretty clear message. We're going to build heat pumps. We're going to start building heat pumps for homes. And I have it anymore. I get these mailers with coupons for all kinds of products in my community, and one of them is heat pumps, and like $5,000 minimum. So, how much does it cost Tesla to make a heat pump in a Model Y? $100? I think they could probably make a really good one for a house for $500 and sell it for $1,000 and make a huge profit and massively improve the situation. That's a wild guess. But they're saying it's a 3x reduction, and this is the heating compared to a gas furnace. Now, Florida, we don't heat pretty much. So I don't know whether this applies in Florida in the same way that applies. I don't think they compared this to air conditioning. So that's an interesting question. But, a significant part of the world relies on gas furnaces or other forms of heating, and heat pumps would be more efficient. So that's an interesting question there. And by the way, when heat pumps move heat, they take heat from the outside air and put it inside the house. So they're effectively reducing global warming, if I understand correctly. Maybe I'm missing that. I'm not going to talk about this slide. I'm going to be blunt. I didn't really understand this slide. I think this is about like making steel. Like what you have to do with iron in order to make steel requires massively high heat, and you have to electrify that, and maybe you have to use green hydrogen. I'm not going to get into this one because this is pretty much over my head. Um, Sustainably fueling planes and boats. There was a really cool tweet where they zoomed in on this image, and if you look at, apparently, if you look at the cargo containers at the very end of the boat, I'll put the arrow here. This end of the boat. I don't know if it's visible in this picture, but apparently there's another picture out there that shows it. The images are weird. Like it looks like it was done by stable diffusion, and the image doesn't really make sense. So, but here you've got 5%. This is only a 5% reduction, and it's $0.8 trillion. So this is a big investment for not as much bang for the buck. Elon did talk about, for both planes and boats, going to like where the batteries are part of the structure of the vehicle. That if you go and you basically have to redesign the cargo ship, you have to redesign the plane in order to take advantage of the structural advantages that batteries offer. That probably 4680s produced at scale, two or three generations from now get efficient enough to make this work. I'm guessing that's where they're going, but I'm not going to spend that much. That one's not as big of a deal to me, so I'm not going to spend as much time on that. So you get 30 terawatts from solar and wind farms. You get 240 terawatt hours, and that's leaving out, hydro, leaving out nuclear. You get 240 terawatt hours from vehicle and stationary batteries, and you got $10 trillion in manufacturing capex. I don't think we need to dive into this slide. And basically saying it's feasible. This is the message that what was frustrating for me, because I'm going to be doing another video. I'm probably going to be doing like 3 or 4 at least videos about Investor Day, what we learned from it. The opening of the video, Elon and Drew are basically making a pitch. The opening of the presentation, Elon and Drew are making a pitch for this is how we can transition the world to sustainable energy. And a lot of people were like, well, how is Tesla going to make money? And making money is just going to happen. Like they know that's going to happen. But the mission of the company isn't just make money. The mission is accelerate the transition to sustainable energy. Let me just check the chat here. Half of global economy will have to invest it over 10 years, requires many government commitments. No, it wasn't that much. And it doesn't have to be government commitments. You can do this profitably as a private company. I don't think it was, I think the real plan is probably over 20 years. And I think it was, forget the number. I think they had the number. It wasn't that big. It was significant. It was like 1% or 2% of the global economy. But we're investing that in fossil fuels anyway. It's just changing the investment from fossil. I wish they had said that. We're changing the investment from fossil fuels to electric. Mitsubishi Electric is the largest in the heat pump industry in the chat. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see more. Hey, Howie. Feinstein in the chat. Investor Day was meant to get the institutional investors to chip in big time because retail investor capital won't cut it. Get to and well beyond 20 million vehicles a year. No, they don't need more capital to get to 20 million vehicles a year. This message was to get the rest of the world to join in. That's how I took it. And maybe they didn't say that clearly. I don't think they did say that clearly. Elon specifically mentioned sharing technology with other manufacturers because they can't get to 100 million vehicles a year, and that volume won't replace over 1 billion current vehicles before 2045. Absolutely, 100%. Okay, thank you, Jim, for correcting me. It's 2% was the number. So you got solar and wind deployment. It seemed that again, I feel like they were a little soft here. Solar and wind deployment, it only has to 3x the current rate, I think is what they meant. You only have to triple the rate of solar deployment, and that's growing anyway. Electric vehicle production has to 11x, which, Tesla's doing its part. Others have to produce more electric vehicles. And then vehicle stationary and thermal battery production has to 29x. It's a big challenge. I think they underplayed this challenge. And this is assuming we don't need more, right? By reducing the need from 300 to 500 terawatt hours to 240 terawatt hours, this would have been a 60x or a 50x. But to me, it was almost like a fudge factor. And, this is the point. Yes, they have to invest a lot of money, but if you continue investing in fossil fuels, you're going to spend more money. I thought this was a great point. Again, this pitch was not buy Tesla stock because we're going to make money on this. This pitch was, this is what the world can do to transition to sustainable energy. And pretty much no one got it. Even people who are Tesla bulls were talking about this is how Tesla's going to make a lot of money. Like, no, no, that's not the message that they were trying to send. The message they were trying to send is this is how we transition the world to sustainable energy, and we need other people to get on board with this. And we're showing you how we can be done. So, talking about renewable resources, how you can do it on solar and wind on land. I'm not sure why they didn't include hydro and why they didn't include nuclear. I think they've just decided that nuclear is not going to happen, so we got to get it done. Um, I'm not sure I understand the land use there, but they're just trying to give a sense of the amount of land use that's needed. And then this is um, this is how much energy is used for everything else. And then they're comparing, like, the fossil fuel extraction is this is the fossil fuel extraction that's going on in extracting minerals from the earth. And this is the what's needed to do sustainable economy materials. So you actually use less mineral. There's less mining involved total with this plan than there is with the way that we're doing things now. And again, this is, I want to say this is a fudge. They insisted that there's enough nickel and there's enough lithium within the reserves that already exist, not to mention zinc, copper, cobalt, iron, manganese, etc., that there's enough of this that what they say is needed is only 30% of the total need. Now, if you go with Jeff Don and what Drew said before, 30% becomes 60% because you really need twice as much. And under 30% becomes nearly 30% for lithium. So it becomes a lot harder to get all that nickel out and all that lithium out of reserves. So there's a fudge factor here that I I'm not saying they're lying. I'm just saying, like, we don't know for sure. I buy it. I buy the story, but also what we don't know is if you reduce the cost, because going electric reduces the cost of transportation, let's say, and going to solar and wind in the long run reduces the cost of energy. So if you reduce the cost of energy, people will use more. If you reduce the cost of transportation, people will take more trips. So it's far from clear that 240 terawatt hours is going to be enough. That's my take on that. So history teaches the more we look, the more we find. Yeah, the reserves will grow. This is absolutely true. The same thing has happened with oil. As we search for, it's not that the graph on the left is what people think happens when you mine, that you extract minerals from the earth's surface, you extract oil, and the available amount of materials goes down. And the reality is, as they're searching, the available amount of materials actually goes up even more than what you're extracting from the earth. So, all right. Then they're also talking about recycling. Now, recycling will place a small impact, will have a small role for the next 10 years or so. Once we hit that 20 million vehicle a year run rate, and hopefully other companies are also manufacturing electric vehicles, if you get to steady state, then 10 years later, the 20 million vehicles you made 10 years ago start turning in, and you start recycling those batteries. And if you're using them harder, maybe they're used up in 8 years or something like that, and you can recycle, and you're reducing the demand for minerals. So you get to a point where you're not quite steady state. You're still going to need to mine, but you're doing better. So here's that slide again. Let me look at the chat. How are we doing on time? 30 minutes. Gary Black was on CNBS. The Bears interviewing said they expect dilution. How will they get $80 billion? This is just missing it. Tesla is going to self-fund. Yeah, I agree with you, Mitch. This wasn't Tesla saying we need you to invest in Tesla. They're not doing a cap raise. They said we're going to self-fund this. That this is the rest of the world needs this investment going into other EV makers and other battery makers and other solar and wind and heat pumps and everything, that this needs to be invested to get there. Fossil dependent companies going bankrupt will be necessary for institutional investors. Institutionalized, get the message. Institutionalized, yes. I actually almost said that today, Jim. Institutionalized investors. Water bottles and t-shirts. Let me make a quick pump for the t-shirts. This is the What's Outside the Simulation t-shirt. You got the stainless steel water bottle with Elon on it. Stainless steel water bottle with Tesla. T-shirts at elonbits.com. If you are a supporter, there's a discount code. you support the Daily Live, there's a discount code that you get $2 off of every piece of merch. My provider is really slow, so if you order something, it's not coming fast. Like way more than a month to get your shirts. I don't maybe these will be faster, I'm not sure, but way more than a month to get your shirts. Just to warn you. I think if you order expedited, you'll get it quicker, but uh just wanted to cover that. Okay, so moving on. Oh, not that. The wrong thing. Sorry. So there's a little bit of history here, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to skip through the history. Cybertruck is coming. We're going to skip that. Combining the processes for the future. This was big. They went through there's a lot of detail here that they went through that I think was really important, that this is the path that they follow to make a vehicle. And it's sort of like a straight line. And that's how Henry Ford did it. And they, have this slide showing this is what we do. Um, and there's all these different things that go together, but there's this vision of the future where you take different parts of the car and you have different stations where different parts of the car are being worked on at the same time. So here you have basically what looks like, I'm guessing this is the front of the car. So that you've got, instead of 4 people working on the car, you've got 4 people working on this part of the car. And then you have another part of the car over here, another part of the car over here, another part of the car over here. So you have a lot more people can work on the car, so the car gets assembled quicker. So you have 44% operator density improvement. That's a significant improvement in the number of people working on the car. And you actually get efficient use of space and time. Not space-time, not quantum physics. So, wonderful PowerPoint. So you stamp and paint the left side, the right side of the floor. You cast the front, rear, and other. And these things come together to assemble the vehicle. It's brilliant. I think this is brilliant stuff. You have this unboxed process. There's a video that they ran showing this. I don't know why there's 2 slides here. It looks like the same slide twice. Maybe I'm missing something. But you work on all these different stations together, right? You've got all these different parts that you're working on together. You work on these parts in one space and these parts, and you paint the ones that only paint the ones that need to be painted when they need to be painted. Yeah, I think this is the rear of the car, this is the front of the car, and this is the battery pack and the front seats. And it all comes together in a video that I'm not going to bother sharing, but I think you guys have seen it. Yeah, we'll call it Assembly Line 3.0. I like that's a good name for it. So then you end up with here legacy footprint. I don't know whether legacy footprint is referring to the current footprint for Tesla vehicles. This looks like Giga Austin, I think, or Giga Nevada. So they're basically saying a 40% reduction in manufacturing footprint for the entire vehicle. So that's a significantly smaller building. And then cost of goods sold for 3 and Y. They're basically saying they're getting a 50% reduction in cost in between innovation and size on the next generation vehicle. The vehicle is going to be smaller, so there's less material going in the vehicle, smaller battery packs, so the batteries cost less. ElonBits.com. They had some crazy innovation in Powertrain. I'm skipping over the history again. Sandy Monroe pointed out that these are apparently hairpins. They're changing how they make the motors to make the motors more efficient. The 20% lighter drive unit, 25% less rare earth materials. This comes up again later. 75% smaller powertrain factory, 65% cheaper powertrain factory. So your powertrain production gets a lot better and your powertrain gets better. And I'm not sure how much efficiency this actually is. I've heard some crazy numbers. Like Tesla motors are already very efficient. So you get into the power electronics for this is the current version of how they do power electronics, and they're reducing that and making it simpler. And that this is kind of esoteric, but it's kind of like there's all these improvements that add up. Their simulation software made it easier to make their motors better. Using in-house manufacturing allows them to, they're not relying on somebody else to make their motors for them. They make their own motors, and that makes a huge difference. Now they have this, our next drive unit will be even more scalable. So a couple of details. Oh, let me get this further up here. A couple of details that were important here. A 75% reduction in silicon carbide. Pierre Farragut got this one. Pierre Farragut is a Wall Street analyst. He got this one. That's a big deal. This saves a ton of money on the car. Any battery chemistry accepted. If there's a shortage of one battery chemistry, you get another one. 50% reduction in factory footprint and $1,000 all-in cost. This is on the drive unit, which I think is the motor that drives the car. It's not the entire powertrain, but it's the motor that drives the car. And this is a dramatic reduction in cost. You keep finding ways of reducing cost of producing your vehicles, you end up producing your vehicles at much lower cost, and you can sell them at much lower cost. So there's another big deal coming. On the Model Y requires 500 grams of rare earth 1, 10 grams of rare earth 2, and 10 grams of rare earth 3. The next generation permanent magnet motor needs 0 rare earths. That makes them lower cost and it makes them higher efficiency. It's not that there's no rare earths anywhere in the car. It's just that in this particular part of the car, they were able to get rid of 500 grams of one rare earth, 10 grams of another rare earth, and 10 grams of another rare earth. It's a big deal. Again, another cost saving, another efficiency. They dove into the electronic architecture. That's back in Model S. Made some progress. I think a big deal here is Tesla has been designing its own controllers. In S, they made some. In X, they made more. In Model 3, this is, at the time, I think at the time, they probably make more of their own controllers now. And Model Y. And there's a big jump for Cybertruck is going to use a lot more of Tesla's own design controllers. And then the next generation vehicle, 100% of the controllers will be from Tesla. And that just makes them more efficient in a variety of ways. Switching, again, this is like, hyper technical details that are like, arguably over my head. They replaced lithium. This is something they've already done. They replaced the lead acid battery with lithium ion battery. This is the 12-volt battery that you need to start your car in a gas car and, serve some functions in a regular car. They reduced the cost of the center display, and they're continuing to drive that cost down. So what's next? They're going to 48 volts. I think Cybertruck, it says Cybertruck and all future vehicles. Cybertruck Optimus, which is the robot, and all future vehicles will all be 48 volt. And that just that reduces the weight of the wiring. It reduces the amount of wiring. They've got a bunch of ways that they're making wiring less. And that's, if you save weight, if you save cost, you're able to deliver your vehicle at lower cost in a variety of ways. So just checking on the chat here. How are we doing on time? Model S motors are $15,000 as a replacement part, so about $8,000 to $10,000 cost. Yeah, assembly line. So not sure any other EV manufacturer winds their own motors other than BYD, possibly. Pierre got more EFs. Okay. So go ahead. They're just showing the comparison from the past. Software, I'm probably going to skip over this. They improve the cars. These are things we already know. A lot of data coming back enables them to improve the product. They have all the cars are wired and sending data back to the other computer in Palo Alto or wherever, and they're able to improve the car based on what they learned from how the cars run. A good example of that is how they figured out how to use the air. I have an air suspension on my Model X. Model S's have air suspension. The air suspension can adapt to rough roads, and they can label roads as rough, and the car knows to soften the suspension or raise the suspension when it's approaching a rough road area. I thought this was a really cool bit here, that the software in the car, that the car's computer, as you're assembling the car itself is checking to make sure everything's connected right, that everything's working right. So if there's a problem, the car says, hey, wait a minute, this isn't done right. So you don't move down the assembly line without making sure everything's right. And that makes manufacturing way better. This was another detail. This is they're getting ready for Robotaxi. There's a bunch of features that are built into Teslas now. Tesla Profile, shared phone key, and logistics apps. This is a start. It shows you they're thinking ahead to what the Robotaxi network's going to work like. I thought that was an important detail that, Wall Street completely missed. The efficiency, the cost reduction, speed enables a robotaxi fleet, reduces service at mass scale, and empowers manufacturing. So there's a lot of things that software is doing that makes a big difference. They talked about FSD. This was like a rehash of AI Day, so I'm not going to bother with this one. I mean, Ashok was great, but I don't think he presented anything we hadn't already heard. Maybe James Down was going to check back with that. I think the big thing was talking about AI training. I don't remember whether this was in this part of the presentation or this was in the Q&A, but Elon said, I think it was in the Q&A, that Elon said that this part, that the servers, the Dojo slash the GPU cluster are going to get 10 times faster, an order of magnitude faster by the end of this year. Okay. So 10 months away, the, the computers that are training the neural nets that drive the car are going to be 10 times faster. And by the end of next year, they're going to be 10 times faster again. So they're going to be 100 times more powerful. That's some pretty bold goals there. And, they're turning the impossible into late. So if it ends up being late, it's not a big deal. This was a key detail here that Tesla vehicles using FSD beta have one collision per 3.2 million miles, where the average US car is 0.5 million. So they're 6 times safer than average. FSD beta cars are 6 times safer than average. They had this bot demo, which I still think this was simulation rather than reality. Maybe, I don't want to say it was CGI, but simulated. Almost everyone disagrees with me on that, so maybe I'm wrong. So talk about the charging experience. I didn't think that was that exciting, so I'm going to skip over that. I mean, it's important, but I didn't think this was like the biggest deal in terms of accelerating the transition to sustainable energy. It's important. It matters, and they're innovating here, and it matters. But supercharging, although we all tend to think of it as a really big deal, and it's a really big incentive to own a Tesla, in terms of revenue and cost, it's not a big part of the business. Now, they're working on making it more efficient, and they're probably going to make more money on it, but still, it's a small part of the business. The trip planner thing is cool, providing efficient routing. I've been driving my car, and we're heading towards a particular supercharger, and the car says, hey, wait a minute, that supercharger is crowded. I'm shifting to this supercharger. Pretty cool. Charging time is getting faster. The band of charging, I'm not sure what the fluctuation within the year is, but you can see that they're narrowing and improving supercharging time to, looks like an average of around 30 minutes now. And, my average is probably 25, 30 minutes. They also talked about going to daytime charging as a big change that's coming. They're going to put more lower non-supercharger, but, maybe 6 or 10 or 12 kilowatt chargers in places where people park. They've identified where a lot of people park, and that's something that I think Tesla's working on. And then there's a hint to the diner. And by the way, K10, if you look at the picture, you look really close at this. Sorry. If you look really close at this picture, apparently this dude here looks like Golly from Hyperchange. That's from K10, found that. And then if you look right here, there's a mat underneath the car, which looks like it's like wireless charging. I don't know how important that is. I don't think it's important, but it doesn't hurt. If it works, if it's efficient, great. Tesla supply chain. There was a lot of talk about supply chain. I'm not going to dive into this one today. Yeah, I'm not going to dive into that. This is a lot about how they manage supply chain. This is really important, but I'm just not diving into this today. I'll go on forever if I dive. If I cover everything, I'll go on forever. And you guys, I know you guys want that. So you can just see this is just the growth in vehicles, which I don't think there's anything new there. There's no shortage of chips. They don't think there's a problem getting the volume of silicon wafers that are needed to support not just Tesla's growth, but I think he's also referring to global growth. At the end, Tesla will be using less than 5% of global wafer capacity. Still seems like a lot if you ask me, but talking about how simplified, how the heat pump is going to simplifies everything. But again, next generation thermal architecture, I think they're just making it I don't really think they dove into this as much as maybe they could have. but it sounds like they're going to be making the next generation thermal architecture even more efficient. And again, I'm not going to dive into that. Um, the heat pumps are 99% reduction in labor, 99.995% high quality. The yield is very high. They're able to manufacture them in high volume. So I think it's pretty clear that they're heading towards that heat pump business, but we'll see. Talking about building high volume factories. Uh, they've achieved the 4 millionth car. Talked about how they've ramped factories. I'm just skipping through here because I don't think I'm going to cover much of this. Strengthen the feedlot back between manufacturing and service. As they learn more about how the cars fail and require service, they learn how to make the cars better so they don't fail as much. And they've had 11% time and service reduction, 60% reduction in early service, and a 9% service appointment wait time reduction. So they're making progress in all these areas. We've got the 4 factories that are making cars. Future cell factories too. This is interesting. What do they mean? There is no spoon as a matrix reference. So apparently there's more cell factories coming. That should not be a surprise. A little bit about the 4680 cell. This was kind of cool. They talked about their lithium refinery that they're building in Corpus Christi, Texas, and basically saying it's going to be producing refined lithium by 2024, like beginning of 2024. It sounds like. They also mentioned, I don't know if it's here, they mentioned the cathode facility that they're building in on Giga Texas at Giga Texas, and that's going to be online soon as well. This is another key detail here. You've got the upcoming products in 2023. These are energy products. So this is pretty clearly a next generation Powerwall, which they've already hinted at. I think this is a power pack, which slots in between Powerwall and Mega Pack. Somebody else thought it was a new Mega Pack. There's a big gap between Powerwall and Mega Pack, and there used to be a product called Power Pack and Power Pack 2, and we haven't. Power Pack is not even visible on the website anymore. You can't even find it anymore. So I think this might be a next generation Power Pack, but I'm only guessing. I mean, they deliberately left us to guess. We did some talk about Mega Pack. It sounded like they're going to 25x Mega. So Lathrop is a 40 gigawatt hour factory. It sounded like they expect a 25x Mega Pack production. That's pretty big. I think there'll be a new Mega Pack factory that'll be, twice the size and 10 times the output or something like that. I think that's what's coming. Um, build Mega Pack factories faster, install projects faster. Tesla Electric, they talked about. I'm not going to dive into that today. This is just the building cumulative Tesla storage deploy. They're growing fast. Impact, I'm going to skip over this one because this is boring. I found it boring. Financials, Zach did a deep dive into the company's financials. The main point of Zach's presentation at this part for me was this is how we're managing the company and why we're getting more and more efficient in our because Zach often talks about operating expenses and operating profit and operating margin. And he went through in great depth, which too much depth for me to go to here, how they're operating the company in a more efficient manner in a variety of ways. Now you see here, total cost of ownership, next gen vehicle is not that much less than the Model 3. So this is another signal again that the vehicle will maybe be 2/3 of the weight, 2/3 of the size. It's not half the size of a Model 3. It's maybe 2/3 or 3/4 the size. And then there's other efficiencies that it's probably 3/4 of the size or 80% of the size, and then other efficiencies save a little bit more. So I was a little disappointed that this isn't more of a drop. So if the Model 3 ends up being 15 cents a mile total all-in cost, then the next generation vehicle is 10 cents. That's a good ballpark guess. This is where Zach got into CapEx, sales, general and administrative expenses, and how they're efficient in a variety of ways. We expect our pace of investment to scale with operating cash flow growth. So they're basically planning on investing 150 to 175 billion dollars in capex and investing in the company, all generated from company revenue, company cash flow, free cash flow, company profits, not asking others to invest. I thought this was just one little detail here that I thought was important is the priority of capital allocation. There are certain whiners in the community who want stock buybacks, and they made that the last priority. The first priority is running the company. The second priority is growing the company. The third priority is when we see opportunities. And I've said this. Would you rather have a stock buyback or buy a mining company or an acquisition? Acquisitions are here. I don't think there's any debt to reduce anymore, or not significantly. Could you open a captive financing arm that basically provides car loans and leasing arrangements for Teslas that is in-house? Like right now, they're not doing that. They're only doing it on a limited basis as necessary. Can they do additional CapEx? So all of these things come before buybacks. So if you were looking for buybacks, they just told you that's our lowest priority, as it should be, because you want the company to grow. So, and then they mentioned Giga Mexico. And I wanted to cover one detail that I don't know if I see it in the slides. I'm going to take this off. I don't know if I see it in the slides, but they mentioned that storage would require that Tesla would be doing 1 terawatt hour of storage, which if Giga Nevada, if Lathrop is doing 40 gigawatt hours a year, it would take 25 years. So they said they were going to 25x. I'm a little puzzled on that. That number doesn't add up to me. And in the past, they had said they were going to do 1.5 terawatt hours of energy storage, and they've reduced that to 1 terawatt hour. Let's see. I'm looking in the chat now. Less wiring, yes. Melody was surprised Tom Zhu was actually on stage. Tom Zhu was great. I was with a friend who speaks Chinese and lived in China, and he was blown away by how strong Tom Zhu's English skills were and the ability to communicate at a very high level in English, and that he's freaking fantastic otherwise. The in-assembly diagnostics debugging, tremendous innovation, lots of huge innovations. This is interesting. Jim says Ford is losing $2 billion a year due to manufacturing defects. I'm not sure where you got that number, but I believe it. Everyone on stage, from Mitch, everyone on stage was to show the institutionalist Tesla has much more management than just Elon. I thought that's one of the biggest messages from this event was, look at this amazing management team. Not just look at how amazing the people are on the stage and how amazing the management team is, but look how everyone buys into the mission. This happens at AI Day. This happened at Battery Day. This happens, every time Tesla has an event and they bring out like people from the team, everyone buys in. And I think it was really important to see that Zach Kirkhorn and Drew Baglino were featured. I'd say Zach was featured a little more, and he was on Elon's right side. So if you're looking for CEO successors, Tom Zhu was down like several people. It's very clear that Zach and Drew are the leaders behind Elon and the company. They're the people he trusts the most. They've been there a long time. No, not upwards of 5% of global wafer capacity, just under 5% of global wafer capacity, Jim Manley. 12,000 BTU residential heat pumps, good down to negative 23 degrees Fahrenheit, cost about $1,500, $3,000 retail. I'm seeing, I don't know if 3,000 retail is real. I'm not sure. Vehicle BTU needs are about half that. So if you double the Model Y heat pump, I actually don't know does anybody know what the BTUs are on a Model Y heat pump? That's an interesting question. Elon had his cringe. Yeah, there was the copy and paste moment. That was funny. Elon didn't like that. I don't want to say buybacks should never happen. They should happen when you don't have anything else to do with your money, and they have a lot to do with their money. Tesla could provide a dividend to stabilize the stock swings, deploy solar farms with gigapacks, become an energy provider, send the profits to shareholders as a dividend. It's an interesting question. I don't know how easy it is to deploy solar farms if you're not a utility. Like in Florida, I'm not sure that you can deploy solar farms practically without being a utility. So I don't know the answer to that. I've been researching that question for my own business idea. The 20 million target became real because everyone mentioned. Yeah, I mean, this is the whole point. The team is on board. Jim Manley says by 2050 will require 300 terawatt hours of total capacity to replace everything with electric energy. So I agree with you, Jim, or at least I should say, I don't know the answer. I know that Drew Baglino, Elon, and Jeff Don were all saying 300 to 500 before, and they've changed that to 240. I do think they'll become a utility. That's true. What percentage of Giga Mexico production do you think will be shipped to the U.S.? 0. Someone said they talked to Tom Zhu about that, and 0% of Giga Mexico's production will go to the U.S. Giga Mexico's production will go to other countries. There was what I heard was a clear mention twice that they will be building multiple factories at the same time. The idea that they're only building Giga Mexico is missing the point. I think they're gonna be building Giga Mexico, Giga Texas, Giga Shanghai, and Giga Berlin. The next generation vehicle factories will be built in all 4 places at once. That's a prediction. Did I see the V4 chargers? I think I saw a quick reference to it, but I didn't focus on that. So how are we doing? We're about an hour in. Still got people typing in the chat. Who will build Gen 3 for U.S. consumers? I think Giga Texas is going to build Gen 3. But whatever, next generation vehicle. They're going to build another building at Giga Texas or somewhere else in the U.S. for the U.S. market. Giga Mexico is for Mexico and Latin America. Mexico, you got Argentina, you got Brazil, you've got Colombia, you've got Chile, you've got Peru. I think those are the biggest countries in South America, Latin America. Jim Manley says Austin will be where next-gen factory vehicles are being prototyped now. I tend to agree with you, Jim, that not only that, I think they've already been prototyped. We just haven't seen them. They've already been prototyped, and they know what they want to do, and it's now, okay, we know what we want, now copy and paste, and they build 4 of them at the same time, and that's going to be mind-blowing. And they may get to 20 million way before 2030 if that's what they're doing. Yeah, it's not going to be Fremont. No. Building Giga Mexico for new markets. Tom, in an interview afterwards, also mentioned another factory besides Mexico, maybe Malaysia. I think Japan makes sense, but I've been saying that forever, and I'm probably wrong. I think South Korea makes sense. I don't know that Malaysia makes sense, but it doesn't hurt. I don't want to say it's impossible to do Malaysia. Maybe Malaysia has free trade agreements with other countries that would make it work. I don't know. Just looking in the chat. I'm probably going to wrap this up because we're going about an hour and I want to take a break. I need to find a better position for this. This isn't great on my back the way I sit here. But I see a few people typing, so I'm going to wait a little longer. The next gen assembly line won't be up in volume until 2024. I don't think it's going to produce in significant volume until 2025. We'll see. Yeah, I mean, I think don't get your hopes up too much. You still need battery supply to feed these vehicles. Australia is too small of an economy. The population of Australia is too small for that to make sense. D. Layton, you're going to buy me a steak dinner? You should buy me a steak dinner anyway. I don't really like steak, to be honest. It's not my first choice. All right. So I want to thank everybody especially I want to thank the supporters. Please consider supporting me on the Locals platform or on Patreon or as a YouTube channel member. I'm going to put this video, I recorded this video, I'm going to put it on YouTube later. But please consider supporting me. Check out the merch, the t-shirts. This is an Elon quote, but there's all kinds of t-shirts at elonbits.com. You got the stainless steel water bottles at elonbits.com. Please check out my other videos. Like this video. If you're on YouTube, like this video, share, and subscribe. And thanks everybody so much for watching.